All right, man, peace. Brothers, one of my favorite sayings is that sometimes our eyes are bigger than our stomachs. Meaning what? Sometimes our ambition, our optimism, our aspirations are far higher than our natural gifts to attain that position that we seek after. They say that leaders are born, they're not made. I partially agree with that. But I also agree with the assertion that sometimes men can have greatness thrust upon them. Meaning what? Sometimes you have people who, they may not be necessarily seeking after a position of prominence or leadership, but they might have that grain, that seed of leadership within them, and it just has to be activated. And other times, and we've all seen this, whether it was in the workplace or maybe if you were in the military or if you were on a certain team, basketball, baseball, football, well, you have people who want to be something that maybe it's just not in them to be. They're talented, they're gifted, but it's just not in you to be that rah-rah guy, the leader, the person that everybody wants to listen to and hear and follow behind. And Kyrie Irving seems to be stuck in that mode of trying to assume a role that's not intrinsic within him. The components of leadership do not seem to be within him. Maybe they will come out later, who knows? But I think that him trying to force himself into that role right now is going to lead him to a downfall that he might not really be ready to handle. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
First up, I want to get to this. I sat down with Kyrie Irving over All-Star Weekend, and I asked him about, well, everything. Celtics evolving chemistry, that unexpected phone call to LeBron, and the lingering free agency questions. Let's be honest, he's going to face them for the next 5 months. Take a look.
We all know that things have not been going well in Boston.
You've got a lot of guys that were asked to take a step back.
I don't think we anticipated how difficult that was going to be.
I did. Y'all didn't, but I did. I said before the season, Jason Tatum, the most overrated player in the NBA. Does not mean that the brother's not going to be a good player, but greatness, I never saw it. I have no idea why people assume that. The dude stepped up last year in the playoffs and averaged about 17 a game, and people were talking about him like he was going to be the next LeBron James or the next George Gervin or something. I never saw that. So I always knew that they had too many of the same type of player, and it was going to cause chemistry issues that we're seeing manifest themselves right now.
So you and I sat down at the start of the season, and you talked about the challenge it was going to be to have everyone sort of figure out how to play together.
Yeah.
It's turned out to really be a challenge. What has it been like along the way?
You know, you obviously have expectations to live up to individually, but as a team, you know, it's a lot to figure out all in 1 year. You know, bringing a lot more talent. You know, we didn't fill in just pieces here and there. We filled in pieces with great players. So, you know, a lot has changed since the beginning of the season, but overall, I just want to win, man.
You know, that sounds nice. I just want to win. It's like people who are in a relationship and they say, you know, I just want things to go back to the way that things were. Well, maybe the reason why things are not what they once were is because they were never like that to begin with. You were just in a phase, you were in a fog, and both you and that other person, or at the very least one of you, were not really being genuine in who you were. And when the situation changes, when different components come in, everything else is going to change. There's always going to be a ripple effect. The point of me saying all that is to say this. If Kyrie Irving really wants to win, then he has to implement winning habits on the team. He's the lead guard. He always has the basketball in his hands. He can take over the game whenever he wants. He has to make his teammates feel like they're the best player on the floor. That's what a great leader does. That's what a great point guard does. And despite the notion that he might want to put out there or propagate, I'm sure that everybody knows by now he wants to be Kobe Bryant. But at the end of the day, he's 6'2". He's supposed to be the point guard. So his job is to make Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward feel like they're the best player on the basketball floor that night. He has to make them feel that way. And that's how he gets them fully invested in making sure that the team wins, especially on defense. When you see teams start to miss assignments on defense, it's because they don't care about one another. They don't care about one another because they're not really feeling the overall vibe on offense. You have to feed certain players so that they play harder for you on defense. And Kyrie is not picking up on that. So hopefully some of the lessons that he's learning in this year in Boston, he'll be able to take with him wherever he goes should he decide to leave.
And I'm going to dedicate myself every single day. And if I got to bring everybody else up with me, then that's just what I have to do.
Well, I have news for you, brother. You can only bring up people with you who want to follow you.
Your teammate Marcus Morris did say that it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been fun even when we've been winning a lot. Have you felt that?
It's been a trying year for us, because we basically have a bunch of young men in our locker room that feel like they're capable of doing a lot more than what they're doing. And
Ding! I said that before the season. And nowhere in the world you're going to bring back all these 21, 22-year-old guys and they're just going to say, you know what, we're just going to follow behind Kyrie. That was not going to happen, especially when they were able to get to the Eastern Conference Finals last year.
That's okay, but there's a maturity that you have to have. There's a professionalism that you have to really showcase every single day.
I think that once Kyrie leaves the Boston Celtics, a lot of stuff is going to come out. You're going to hear a lot of chirping from those young boys, especially Tatum and Brown, particularly if Brown happens to get traded.
And that's what the great ones do. I initially didn't play the minutes I wanted to play. I'm 26 years old, heading into my prime. Like, why do I have to wait for anybody? Terry Rozier he played in the playoffs. He did extremely well. Coming back, that's a natural competition that me and him had.
Ding! I said that before the season, that Kyrie was going to have to show or re-show all those players on the squad that he was the best player on the team. He was going to have to establish that in training camp. And even after he established that, they probably still resisted.
It is what it is. No one wants to say it, but I will. It's part of
Of course you will, because you know you're better than them.
Their growth. When you have winning in mind, then, you got to understand that. You got to do what it takes, but you got to understand your teammates.
Kyrie Irving has been working through what it means to be the leader of a team.
I think Kyrie's still trying to kind of figure that part out a little bit.
What have you learned about being a leader so far this season?
That you don't have to try to be a leader.
Well, you know what, brother? If that's what you learned, that means that either you're being disingenuous about that or you're being hard-headed, because you've continuously tried to be a leader despite the fact that you claim you've learned that you don't have to try to be a leader. The best way to display leadership skills, especially if you've never been in that position, is to be magnanimous, is to be giving, not to tell other players what they're supposed to be doing for you, but to show that you're willing to sacrifice for the sake of the team. If you look up the great Isaiah Thomas's numbers from the early to mid 80s, he had seasons where he averaged 21 points, 12 assists, 23 points, 13 assists. But when they started winning, his numbers came down to 18 points, 17 points, 8 assists, 7 assists, because the ball was not in his hands all the time. He would give it up to Joe Dumars. He would give it up to Vinnie Johnson and let them run the point. Or he would throw it down in the low post to Mark Aguirre or to Adrian Dantley. And they would dribble, kick back out to him, and then he would move the ball. He could have dominated the game and kept putting up big numbers, but he realized that leadership is through sacrifice. Leadership is not through exaltation, it's through sacrifice.
You don't have to
Did you think that at the start?
Yeah, because you naturally propel yourself to this position. You naturally start listening to outside advice, like, hey, how did you deal with this? How did you deal with that? And at the end of the day, I've always had the tools. Now it's just about going out there and just doing it, improving it, and just being myself. That's the best version of me.
Irving picked up the phone and
Well, what if the best version of you and you being yourself is not a leader?
dialed 1-800-LeBron.
You did make a lot of headlines when you came out. Not only said what you said about the young guys, but also said that you called up LeBron and you said, oh, now I know what it was like when I was younger and you were the one who was in my position now. A lot of guys would not have made that phone call. Why did you make the phone call?
Because he was trying to play a mind game with his teammates. That's the only reason why he did it.
Well, I think that, it takes a very, very strong individual to, replay a lot of the experiences that you've had, a lot of anger that you had built up, that where you didn't address the situation and you allowed it to fester, and then it was just combustion. It came out and it just, and then you realize, hey, man, I didn't have to deal with that the same way I dealt with that. I didn't have to go about it that same way. Now, mind you, I have no regrets in terms of any decision that I made, going about my individual journey and what I want and foresee for my career. And yeah, apologize. That was a step for me just to move forward in my life.
Kyrie's future now even more uncertain.
At the end of the day, I'm going to do what I feel is best for my career now.
Let me say this very quickly before we move forward. I have no problem with Kyrie Irving being self-reflective and saying that he apologized to move forward in his life. Those are all great things. But the fact that he advanced that personal and private conversation to the media without being prompted, that's what confirms to me that it was agenda-driven. Let me rewind this back a little bit.
And I don't. That was a step for me just to move forward in my life.
Kyrie's future now even more uncertain.
At the end of the day, I'm gonna do what I feel is best for my career, and I don't owe anybody.
I agree with you there, bro.
You made some headlines too when you talked about your own journey forward and your free agency, and you were just going to do what is best for you at the time when it comes. What is it like to have everybody talking about you and talking about this all of the time? The last time you went to go win a title, 2016, you didn't have all this going on. Now you're going to try to win a title, and talk's going to be there the whole time.
Well, the talks don't stop. I mean, the talks follow the great players in the league, you know.
Agreed. I'm glad that you understand that.
You know, and I'm appreciative and grateful to be one of those great players in our league now.
And you certainly are that. To whom much is given, much is required.
Now, you know, I've worked my way to get here. You know, and honestly, all that goes with the free agent talk is really a distraction. You know, and a lot of people don't realize on the outside that, you know, a lot of things that are said get into the locker rooms. Like a lot of things that are put in headlines get into locker rooms. Like media has broken up locker rooms. Like
I agree with that. There's little doubt about that. And kudos to you for admitting that. Hopefully you have those type of conversations with your teammates.
Like it's been done before. Like
as a matter of fact, I've made quite a few videos on that it was very clear to me that certain talking heads like Shannon Sharp, Chris Broussard, Nick Wright, Colin Cowherd, they were going out of their way to tell Kyrie or to put forth this energy after the playoffs last year. Oh, Kyrie, you're not the best player on the Celtics anymore, Kyrie. Now it's Jason Tatum. Why were they saying that? Were they saying that because they really believed that? No. They were saying that because they were trying to put in the heads of some of his teammates that they should try to compete with Kyrie for the leadership position. And I think that they were effective. They were extremely effective, to put it mildly.